So we're here. We're here with Jonny Harris. First off, thank you so much, Jonny, for joining us and giving this great opportunity.
Well, listen, thanks so much for inviting me in. From the little bit that David has told me about the academy, it sounds like an incredible community project. So I'm flattered that you asked me to participate.
Yeah, it's certainly it's been wonderful, and it's great to have material like this that we can do and give our kids a chance to ask some questions to a Newfoundland artist that's been quite successful in the crafts that we all love. So, Jonny, I'll ask one of my favorite questions. I host a show on Rogers here in Corner Brook called The Stage Door,
Hmm.
and it's all about theater, what's going on. And my favorite question to ask is a tricky one of what was the big moment when you realized, hey, the arts is something I really want to do.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not proud of the story, Ian. I was in high school, and a buddy of mine, he said, "Hey, I've got a great plan where we can miss a bunch of classes." And I said, "How can we do that?" And he said, "If we get on this set crew for the school play." I said, "What does that mean?" He says, "We'll be building set pieces and moving sandbags and bringing them to the drama festival." And I thought, great, if I can miss some classes doing that stuff too. But when I got there, I became a part of the set crew. And Kevin Lewis was the drama teacher at Holy Heart at the time. And so I was on the set crew and I got to miss a few classes. But when I saw the drama festival, when I saw all the plays that the different schools were putting on, I thought, wow, this is such a cool thing. It's the coolest thing that I had witnessed in high school. And I thought, I'm going to get on the set crew again next year. And next year rolled around, and I thought, you know what, maybe why not audition? And auditioned, and I got a very small part actually. As a part of the ensemble cast, I had to be a tree at one point, so I sort of had to do this for a couple of hours, swaying in the wind, and um, but I was the best tree I could be. But anyway, that's how I got into theater in high school, and it really saved me a bit. I wasn't showing a whole lot of promise in other areas of school, and I sometimes joke. I say my parents were the only parents to ever recommend theater school to their child. Um, my parents said, there's this great theater program in Corner Brook. It's part of Memorial University, which they were both sort of affiliated with. And I thought, I didn't have other plans. I thought, okay, I'll do an audition and see if they'll take me at Grenfell. And and I was so lucky. The class I landed in at Grenfell too was a really good. We got along well. There was a bunch of talented actors. The faculty there was solid at the time. The English department, we had to take some English and history electives. The profs at Grenfell in those departments were excellent, and yeah, I really enjoyed my time there. And then sort of Ian, sorry, I'm being long-winded, but that segued into a summer at the Theatre Newfoundland and Labrador Festival in Cowhead, and then a few summers in Trinity Bay at the Rising Tide Theatre Festival, and that was it. I was going down that path.
Absolutely. I think, it's great that you brought up playing a tree because, of course, we're doing Into the Woods. So there's lots of trees, and that's the show
Okay.
we're kind of working on through this digital system now is working on a lot of that, in which a lot of the cast is part of the forest at some point.
Yeah.
They weave in and out of trees, they become trees, they move trees, all that good stuff.
That was another that was something that really inspired me also. There was a production at Holy Heart of Into the Woods, and Mark Critch was the narrator. Davenant Doyle was one of the actresses, one of the singers in it. And when I saw that a local production could pull off a top-rate musical like that, I was blown away. I thought that was very inspiring.
Absolutely. No, musical theater is certainly one of our programs that we offer, and it's a lot that we really love to do to bring out the potential in a lot of these kind of shows that have been adapted to junior versions so that younger performers can take them on.
That's excellent.
So, of course, while we're on the topic of theatre in Newfoundland, and especially the Grenfell Theatre Program, we do have two grade 11 students. I should say we have people from, I think, we have some of our rising stars, which is grade 1 and 2 watching, right up to our junior ensemble, which the oldest is in grade 11.
Okay.
And two of those grade 11s are really considering going to Grenfell to do a theatre degree when they graduate. So, what do you recommend to someone who's looking at that program as an option?
I listen. I had an excellent time there. I thought the faculty was excellent. There was some of the electives that I wasn't fussy about taking. I really enjoyed some of the history, English. There was a theater history um, class that Ken Livingston taught, who's no longer with us, but he was just a brilliant speaker, and the level of production, so there are students that are taking um, set craft, and then there's also the actors. You have to dabble in each other's areas of expertise and learn a little bit about what the other one does, which is interesting. And the fact that it was a production based program, we were part of a major production with great, incredible level of costuming and set pieces, an intense amount of direction and rehearsal every semester. I spoke to other actors after who say, "Oh yes, I went through a program in Alberta or here or there," and who really did one big production at the end of their 4 years, at the end of their bachelor's degree. And we were in several, and which I think is important because you learn not just from your directors and your profs, but from the other, your classmates. And you see how different people have different styles, and you see what somebody does well and try to adopt a bit of that, and see some other skills that somebody else has. So it's been a while since I've been there. I graduated in 1990, so it's been a long time since I'm sort of out of the loop with the program now. But I had a great time, really formative years. Met some friends that I'll have for the rest of my life, and I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Well, that's certainly great to hear. And of course, the great thing about doing a theater program and making those connections is you get to make them again and again and again. You get to get a part in something and, oh, hey, you're at school same time I was, and you
Yeah.
reconnect over and over.
Yeah, I've worked so many times in theater and in TV with people who've been through that program, people who were in my very class. So it was a great experience.
And of course, speaking on one of those connections is, of course, David Meggs, our Grossmore Star Music Artistic Director. His sister, Adriana, directed you in a film not too long ago now.
That's right. Yes, in Goalie. Well,
Yeah.
I've done a couple of movies for Adriana, actually. One called Grown Up Movie Star, and another called Goalie, which I think might be airing tonight on CBC in lieu of Hockey Night in Canada.
Yeah.
I think they're going to have Movie Night in Canada, and Goalie might be airing this evening. So I've a very small part of that, in a very small role in that movie, but essentially just two scenes, but really tasty ones. I got a nice little bit in that one.
Yeah. So just going on through now, and just a reminder to anyone who's tuning in, if you have any question, send me a private message in the chat so I can know that you have a question for Jonny, and we can pass that along and make sure that all of those get answered. So the next one I have for you is about sketch comedy.
Yeah.
So we're in a world that is evolving constantly, that our media is so fast. We're getting the update almost instantaneously. So to be a sketch comic, someone who's writing based on what's going on, must be quite tricky to do in these times.
Absolutely, yeah. When you're trying to write topical sketch comedy, certainly. I did a stint as a staff writer at This Hour is 22 Minutes, and so that was the pressure from that job. Is you felt a little bit like you could never relax. Like you had to stay on top of the headlines, even on your days off. You thought, okay, if I don't have a newspaper in my face, I'm not going to be ready for Monday morning. So you really need to sort of keep up on current events and but then there's also, I was with the troupe, sketch comedy troupe, the Dance Party of Newfoundland, and in that troupe, it wasn't as topical. It wasn't, political satire or news satire. It was just sort of zany, wacky sketches, so they could be a bit more timeless. And the nice thing there is, of course, you can perform those sketches for years, and they don't become outdated immediately, as is the case with political satire.
Hmm.
Although there's probably a few Donald Trump jokes that you could tell today that you could still tell in 5 years from now.
Yeah, certain things I don't think we'll move on from too quickly.
No.
And of course, one of your major roles has been Murdoch Mysteries, which has had an incredible number of seasons,
Yeah.
has been very popular in Canada. So congratulations on maintaining that, first of all.
Thank you. Thank you. It's unprecedented. I mean, I guess we're one of the longest running shows in the country now. I think Heartland maybe started a year before us, and they're still going.
Hmm.
We're creeping up into like Beachcombers territory now. So
Yeah.
this we're gonna shoot again this summer, and that will be season 14. So yes, it's been an incredible run, and I give a lot of credit to the writers. They keep coming up with interesting stories for each episode, and there's pros and cons to it. Going with a show that long, it becomes, if it loses any excitement after the years, it can be made up in the fact that it's you develop a certain level of comfort with your character. I don't go on to set of Murdoch Mysteries thinking, oh, how am I going to play Crabtree in this scene? It's sort of there after so many years. You sort of got to trust what you've been doing, and it becomes less stressful, which is nice.
Absolutely. And one of the kind of questions that's come through is, playing the same character for 13 seasons right now. It's one thing I love about TV is you get to see these characters grow and change a little bit and develop, because they get more fleshed out. They become more and more real, and sometimes that means a big shift for the character. So what's it like getting to fill those shoes, for 13 seasons?
Well, I really enjoy, when I get some of the a little bit more dramatic stuff. Obviously my Crabtree's role on the show is to provide some lighter moments, some comedy relief. But they've also written quite a few more intimate storylines with relationships and enemies that he's encountered. Crabtree's been to jail, and and I think that's true for the other actors too. I think Yannick and Helene and Tom, who play Murdoch, and Julia Ogden and Inspector Brackenreed, I think they sort of enjoy the scenes where they get to be a bit light and funny. So
Mm-hmm.
the grass is always greener, right? Um, but yeah, the character does develop over time. I sort of like what they've done with. They've done a lot of interesting stuff with Crabtree. I remember, if I have any advice, I think sometimes you can't overthink a role. I mean, it's important to think and develop a character and think about it. But I used to worry a lot when I read the scripts. I thought, is Constable Crabtree smart or dumb? I can't figure it out. In some scenes it seems one way. In other scenes, in some he's very highly intelligent and articulate, and then he believed some really outlandish theories. And eventually I just sort of stopped worrying about it. And I played each scene sort of for what it was, and I think it's worked out all right.
Hmm. Yeah, well, being a fan of the show, I can certainly say I enjoy watching all the episodes, and it is true. There's a lot of antics with Crabtree, but there's also those kind of heartfelt moments that sneak up on you.
Yeah, it's like after that many years, yeah, you get to do a little bit of everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, your other show that you're currently running as well is a bit of a kind of passion project for you with Still Standing. So,
Yeah.
what is it like being a part of that and getting to go to all these wonderful places with all the character?
Well, it's amazing. We just got renewed, and so this will be our sixth season. So time flies, and knock on wood, and all the rest of that. But it's been unbelievable. I mean, we get to go to places that you would never otherwise get to go to, that you would never otherwise think to go to. And it's nice to say we've been in every province and territory now. And yeah, it's really been a bit of you can't help but fall in love with the country when you see that much of it, and you get to see so many. We're looking for the positive in each place that we go. So when you hear so many stories of tenacity and optimism, and people who are really selflessly engaged in their community, doing things like you guys are doing, things that people who are just creating and developing positive, good projects and good vibes for their community. And you really sort of you really learn to appreciate that. And you see a huge spirit of volunteerism all around the country, and you see people who are when they're faced with an option of whether to laugh or cry in tough times, you see that a lot of people choose to laugh.
Hmm. Absolutely. I think the resilience in a lot of those smaller places, especially, is quite amazing to be able to see that and continue to be a part of it, especially when it happens here.
Yeah, there's a certain resilience and sense of humor that I perhaps naively thought was sort of particular to Newfoundland, and because you see a lot of it in Newfoundland. But I tell you, there's a lot of little corners of Canada where things haven't gone so well, that people share that same attitude.
Hmm. And I know for me, being a bit of a kind of theater history buff, it certainly reminds me a little bit of some of the roots of Canadian theater, like the farm show, where a theater troupe went to these small farms and actually worked on them
Is that right? Yeah.
to know the characters. It's and then people loved it because they got to see themselves on the stage,
Sure.
in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
in the
yeah.
final show.
Yeah, I like the history of it. The collective theater programs. I mean, the old Codco gang, Mary Walsh, Andy Jones, and those guys used to get together and create some of those shows. And yeah, everybody. They say people like to see a mirror of their community shown back to them. So it's sort of timeless.
Absolutely. And what would draw you to a community when you're looking at the communities that you want to choose for Still Standing?
I think we have a team. We've got a couple of researchers in our office, so we're really looking for a survival story, an interesting story. So we're looking for a town that might be struggling economically, but this is a FaceTime coming in. I'm going to deny that. Sorry. Okay. So yeah, we're looking for survival stories. Maybe it's a town that's lost its main industry, and people, but we want to see a town where people are rallying. Where people are trying to make things better. A town that's trying to reinvent itself. And also for me, I'm a bit of a bit of a history nerd, or at least I have become since participating in this show. And so an interesting slice of history for me is really, if you're somewhere in Manitou Beach, Saskatchewan, and you find out that Al Capone used to smuggle liquor from that area across the border, or if you go to Belle Island and you learn the story of iron ore freighters that were sank by German submarines during the Second World War. I think if you can get a really sort of flashy, very fascinating piece of history like that, it makes my job writing easier, because it's the story, it's entertaining in itself.
Yeah, for sure.
Hopefully I'll make it a bit funny, but it's entertaining on its own.
Yeah, so that's the end of the formal interview, but we have a couple questions that we want to open up to our students to be able to ask.
Okay.
So I just took notes on a couple of them that I saw. So like I said, if you have any questions, just send me a private message and hopefully we'll be able to get to some of them. So Joel, if you could bring Violet's mic live, she has a question about advice for writing. So Violet, once you're live now, if you want to ask your question for Jonny.
Hi. I was just wondering, you were talking about sketches and comedy sketches. For any aspiring writers or comedy sketch writers, do you have any advice for boosting their confidence and just being more sure of yourself and confident in what you're writing?
Violet, I don't know if I do. That is an excellent question. Confidence is the hardest thing to come by. And if you do get bitten by this bug and you continue to write and perform comedy, it may be something that will always be an issue. It is for me. I still find, even though Still Standing has gone for several years, and I still worry about, if some of the jokes I write are funny or not. If you're doing sketch comedy, it's kind of cool because it's not solely on your own shoulders. You get to bounce ideas off some friends. You get to argue with your friends about what the good ideas are or are not, and that will happen as well. But it's a great question, because confidence is a big part of the game, and all you can really do is try your hand at it and get out there and try to do some writing, try to get a couple of shows up on stage, and it may always be a challenge, but it's something that you'll learn to deal with as you go. But it's confidence. That's the tough one. That's half the battle, I tell you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Violet, for asking that. I see that Amy Andrews has just connected to us now. And Jonny, it's my understanding that when you were in Corner Brook, you were in a production of Guys and Dolls that Amy actually choreographed.
Yes. And I'm not much of a dancer.
But you could move.
Okay, well.
I got you moving. It's good, Jonny. You did a good job.
Listen, you did a fantastic, as you always do on all your productions. But I remember some of the stuff we did in Guys and Dolls. And moving around in those gangster suits wasn't the easiest. In our pinstripe suits wasn't the easiest thing.
3-piece suits with hats and the whole thing.
Yeah, our fedoras and all that. But it was great. I remember, I think I cheated a little bit, though. I know you had a few numbers that were choreographed with big sort of roll, with the guys playing the dice games and the big sort of flashy rolls and movements. And I think I just sort of ran around in the background pretending I knew what I was doing. But
yeah, you and Mike Payne ducked out of that one pretty quick.
Leave it to the pros.
It's actually funny because Guys and Dolls was recently done here in Corner Brook by the junior high, by Corner Brook Intermediate. They did Guys and Dolls Junior. So a couple of the people with us were involved in that show. So they're very familiar with all those dice rolls and fancy tricks.
It was a fun one. And actually, Ken Jacobson from the English department at Grenfell played one of the leads in that, and he was fantastic. The whole cast, it was a phenomenal cast from the community.
Yeah, and I know Israela knows Ken for sure from church.
Yeah.
Big excited reaction there when they heard that name. Next up, we have a question from Jesse. So, Joel, if you could activate Jesse's mic there. Just one moment.
Hi.
Hey,
Which do you prefer, stage or film TV?
well, that's a good question too. That's a good question too. There are certain there's some fundamental differences, pros and cons to either. I guess camera work is a little easier because you can fool up, and everybody does, so it's no big deal. You're expected to know your lines and everything when you get there, but everybody flubs a line every now and then. You don't get the amount of rehearsal that you do for stage work. So you come in knowing your lines, and then you have a brief blocking session with the director, and you figure out who's going to stand and move where when, and then you shoot the scene. And the other thing is you shoot the scene multiple times, so they move the camera around, so you get a lot of tries at it. And anytime you flub a line, you just collect your thoughts and start again, and it's a very normal thing. So in a way, that's low pressure, as opposed to on stage where you really got to have your material down pretty tight. Of course, the wonderful thing about stage is the immediate payoff. There's nothing better than being on stage and delivering a joke and people laugh. A theater full of people laugh at your joke. When you're doing camera work, you really have no idea how you did for a few months until the film or TV show has been edited and you finally see it on TV. So those are what I would say are the fundamental differences between the two. As for which I prefer, that's tough to say. Also, camera work generally pays a little better. but I feel very fortunate that I'm able to do some of both right now.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jesse, for that question. I see Lydia has a question. She wants to know, what is your favorite show that you've been a part of? Hard question.
Well, that is my favorite show that I've been a part of. I would say, Still Standing is of in my career. That said, it's also there are sometimes it's stressful. If I feel like an episode hasn't gone very well, I'll really get myself into a tizzy. And as I was saying, I think to Violet earlier, confidence, your confidence can always get shaken. But yeah, I think Black Mysteries has been wonderful for me. There's a huge amount of stage work that I'm proud of. I worked in Rising Tide Theater for several summers, which for me was a huge education in Newfoundland history and Newfoundland culture. And I learned more in my summers about Newfoundland and its history in my summers there in Trinity Bay doing theater than anywhere else. So that was absolutely invaluable. So it's difficult to say. I'm very proud of Still Standing, but there's something to be taken from any production that you're in. For example, I'm an excellent dancer now, having learned some moves from Amy Andrews in Guys and Dolls, performed right here in Corner Brook.
There we go.
Next up, shout out.
Oh, there we go. Now we have a request, Jonny. This one is from Macy. Macy's one of our Moonbeams, which is our grade 2 and 3 group.
Okay.
And she would like to hear you tell a funny joke.
Okay. Well, here we go. I'll tell one joke, and this is one of my all-time favorites. And it goes like this. A guy walks into a doctor's office with a banana halfway up his nose, and the doctor says, well, right away I can see you're not eating properly. So that's one of my, that's not my joke, but it's one of my all-time favorites. I guess if I had
good.
another one that I always liked, it was when the bug hit the car windshield, what was the last thing to go through his mind? His butt. And I always liked that joke does a little sort of flip on the way you're supposed to think about it. And I also was thinking about the butt sort of going through the body of the bug. And I don't know, there's just something goofy and funny about that joke to me.
Yeah, that's a very kind of cartoon quality to that joke there.
Yeah. Got a big laugh from Kira, I see. There we go. Thank you.
So next up, we have a question from Lily Smallwood. So Joel, if you just want to activate Lily's mic there so she could ask that.
Hi.
Hi, Lily. How are you?
I'm good. Do you ever get nervous? And if so, how do you deal with your nerves?
Well, that's another excellent question. That's a bit close to the confidence question. Yes, I get bad stage fright. And I think earlier in my career, the only way I could combat that was with the amount of rehearsal. So I knew that if I was going on stage and I'd be full of nerves and nervousness, I would rehearse my material compulsively. I would rehearse it so much that if I went onto the stage and my whole body and nervous system was full of nervousness and anxiety, that I knew the material so well that my body would almost just go through the motions and do the performance, even though the back of my mind is racing. So I think that's what, and I'm sure there are other techniques. Trying to slow down your breathing before you go on stage is very important, to breathe deeply into your diaphragm. It's the only thing you can do to really sort of control your nerves and actually, bring your heart rate down if you're feeling very nervous. So, trying to remain calm and deep breathing, and that paired with just be as prepared as you can be. Just rehearse as much as you can, and know that you're always going to have little flubs here and there. I do. Everybody does. But dealing with nerves is a tough one, and preparation, I guess I would say.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lily.
And next up, Max has a question, if we could just unmute him. We only got time for a couple more questions, folks, but we'll get through as many as we can, probably 3 more questions, and then we're going to clue up. All right, folks?
How do you prepare for auditions?
Auditions are a tough one because Max, you have to put in so much work, and you go in and you get one shot. You know, it's if I'm talking about doing camera work, you get lots of tries to get your line right. Even in a theater production, maybe you don't hit the line right one night, but you're going to get it. You're going to nail it the next night. With auditions are a total headache because you get one chance to go in there, and you're going to be nervous. Regardless, you're going to be nervous. But again, like I said to Lily, really your only weapon there is preparedness, is to be so prepared and just try to, and it's the bane of all actors, because people feel like sometimes they waste their time because they spend so much time learning their audition inside out, and you're 9 times out of 10 you're not going to get the part, and it may have nothing to do with your performance. You might be too tall or too short or too hairy or not hairy enough. You know what I mean? People are usually looking for types for specific roles. So never beat yourself up for not getting a part in an audition. It doesn't have to do with your talent or ability. 99 times out of 100, they already have somebody in mind who's a bit different from you. And that's a frustrating part about the industry, but it's just one you got to live with. Another thing you could think about, Max, is a lot of times people will accept video auditions. So if you're not going in to audition for a theater piece in front of a director, if it's a scenario where you can submit a tape, you need to, it's pretty easy to do these days. You can do it with your phone, aim your phone at yourself, have somebody sitting to the side of your phone reading the other character in your scene. And that's sort of good because you can do it a half dozen times until you feel like you got a decent performance on tape, or not on tape, but on your phone. But yeah, auditioning, that's a tough one. It's so frustrating because even the most successful people, they don't get the part 99 times.
Absolutely. And I guess speaking of interesting parts, we have one question from Lily Cunning, not the Lily we just heard from, and that is, have you, or would you, I guess, ever consider being in a show like Young and the Restless? Very specific.
Wow. Young and the Restless. Well, I don't know. I would try my hand at soap opera acting. I know that I think Joey Tribbiani on Friends has a lot of interesting things to say about soap opera acting.
Mm-hmm.
But I like, it's funny because sometimes, at the ends of scenes in soap operas, people just sort of stare at each other for an unnaturally long amount of time. Well, in Murdoch Mysteries, we have to do that at the end of a scene. Now, that'll get cut in editing, so it doesn't look awkward on TV, but it feels a bit awkward when you're doing the scene with someone. But these long sort of, when you just have to stare at each other for a long time, it's a bit uncomfortable. Sometimes I'll stare at the person's ear or their eyebrow, just so we're not locked in awkward eye contact.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of different styles going on for sure. The next question is coming from Shauna. So Joel, if you could just activate that so she could ask that.
Hi. So I was wondering, since acting is something that you really enjoy, but it's also your job, do you ever find it difficult to keep that separate from the rest of your life?
That's an interesting question too, Allison. It's almost funny. I used to really enjoy watching comedy specials, watching comedians, and there's so many on TV now on Netflix. They have so many specials, and it is a bit weird when it becomes your job. Sometimes I'm scrolling through the channels on TV and I see a stand-up comedian who I'm sure if I just stayed and watched it, I would get a big laugh and it would be nice. But there's a little bit of me that's like, that's reminding me of work. I think I'm going to keep flipping the channels to see something else. So that's the thing is, yeah, when it becomes part of your job, you think about it a little bit differently. Unfortunately, you start to think you start to think about it somewhat competitively too. I might go to a comedy festival and sometimes I go to the Halifax Comedy Festival and all the comedians are in a room backstage where they have a TV that's screening the comic who's on stage at that moment doing his or her performance. And everybody's loving it. And someone will tell a great joke and you think, oh, wow, that's such a great joke. And then you have a little thought after that says, why didn't I come up with a joke like that? You know what I mean? So yeah, when it's your job, it takes on a bit of a different slant, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. I still love being able to do it. And I should also include that there's at these festivals, mostly there's a real feeling of camaraderie, and people really enjoy seeing each other perform. And that's stand-up comedy. When you're talking about theater, I mean that's the camaraderie in theater is like no other. Even camera work, theater. I mean, that's really a team working together and mounting that opening night show. And of all the disciplines I've worked in, the level of camaraderie in stage theater is unlike any other, I think.
Yeah, I think it's certainly a wonderful, wonderful world that we're able to all spend our time in, and be able to do these shows together, and get, make these wonderful connections with all the different people that we're working with. I think it's really special that we're able to do that. So the last thing is kind of a local connection. And it's one that I know some of the answer to, but it's just wondering, what types of things have you worked on with Grossmore Summer Music with David right here in Corner Brook and Woody Point?
Well, we're hoping to do some more things in the future. In the past, I've done a few fundraisers for Grossmore Summer Music. David runs a Christmas fundraiser, a Christmas concert every year, where they have some great sketches and just unbelievable singing and musicians. And he's asked me to participate a couple times, and I'll get up and tell a few goofy jokes, and hopefully people will get a kick out of that. But that's I've had a lot of fun at those shows, and the content is top notch. And yeah, I would love to spend more time up there. The only thing for me right now, Murdoch Mysteries and Still Standing both shoot over the summer, so it's sort of difficult for me. I was lucky last year because last summer we actually shot an episode of Still Standing in Woody Point. And actually, we were talking about the Writers' Festival there, and I actually interviewed Dave's father, Randall Meggs, up at the church that Grossmore Summer Music bought and renovated, and just beautiful area. And our camera guys were so impressed. They had their drone out flying over this church, and trees sweeping down into the bay, and just everybody on my team was blown away with the beauty of that place. And it's always nice to get back home,
Absolutely. So I know a couple of these students definitely know that church from having performed in it, and know the Christmas show by performing in the Christmas Gala. So it's really great to hear that, Jonny, that you're enjoying it, and that just a reminder to all of us that we do really have something special that we're a part of. Being in this business and getting to work, with Grossmore Summer Music and with the Graham Academy is really something special. And I'm so glad that we could all get on this evening and connect. We're cluing things up now. So, Joel, let's just everyone get ready to be unmuted so we can say goodbye and thank you to Jonny. And Joel's going to handle that. So we'll all give him a nice send off. I think we're all active. Say thanks and goodbye to Jonny.
Thank you so much.
Joel, whenever you're ready, you could end the chat there.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye. Thank you, Jonny.
Bye.
Bye.
Just goodbye.